Hi, Harry Welding, Republican for Congress. I've been listening to the news all day and just heard my wife turn the news off suddenly with a breaking news announcement. I asked her what it was and walked downstairs. She said Roe v. Wade has just been overturned. She obviously couldn't bear to listen to any more of the news. My campaign has been one about catching lightning in a bottle. It's very unlikely. I don't have $1 million. Frankly, I think if I had $20,000 or $30,000, I could guarantee or come close to guaranteeing that Pete Stauber, the guy I'm running against, would not be the Republican candidate. And that's something that I've been working on, thinking about, really for about the last 6 or 7, 8 months. I know that the best strategy that many Democrats have, especially in red areas, is to flood Republican polls. Say they're Republicans, and I think that's absolutely right. If they value Abraham Lincoln, they're more Republican than the current group of people like those in Texas who want to secede from the Union. And get them into the Republican primaries and bring some sense to the Republican Party by selecting moderates who have all been chased out over the last 30 years by mostly political technocrats who've realized that to win elections you've got to inflame small groups of people and make them powerful special interests like the gun lobby and the pro-life groups. So I'm going to talk about that because I haven't given up. I've got about 48 days to persuade the people in northeastern Minnesota that their best bet for electing anybody other than Pete Stauber is to get me elected in the primary election, and then they can vote for anybody. They can vote for the Democrat, Jen Schultz, who will certainly be the Democratic nominee when all is said and done. We're coming off a couple of days of really remarkable news, and Roe v. Wade, which people have been dreading hearing will be overturned, is just the latest of several things. Yesterday we had two big things. We had the Supreme Court cater to the National Rifle Association and basically decided that laws that were in New York and New Jersey that have kept guns out of the hands of all sorts of dangerous people can't do that anymore. Now, starting today, you can start expecting all kinds of crazies to carry guns in holsters, and we're supposed to believe that this is going to make New York a safer place. As I told the editorial board of the Duluth News Tribune yesterday, I remember when police chiefs and sheriff's officers all over the United States 30 and 40 years ago wanted to control guns because they don't like to send men and now women in blue out to face the hazards of people with guns vomited out on the streets in a mania to make money for the gun manufacturers. And then the other thing that was taking place yesterday was I think the fifth hearing of the January 6th group, which really spelled out how Trump, he wanted a dictatorship. And if he could have overthrown the very legitimate election that removed him, we would have been in a dictatorship. It would have been a Trump dictatorship now. And now the question is, are we going to get a DeSantis presidency or a Trump dictatorship presidency in 2024, which is what the Republican technocrats, political guys, have managed to engineer. How do you get rid of Pete Stauber? Well, it's happening organically. What I had imagined 6 months ago is happening. A few weeks ago, it was discovered that 20% of the Democrats in red state Nebraska had switched over to vote in Republican primaries to vote for the least offensive Republican candidates. In Colorado, there are a group of Democrats that are changing their parties so that they can get rid of Congressman Boebert, who lied that shouted out that Joe Biden was lying in his State of the Union address. Um, uh, there is almost nothing you can do in states that have been so gerrymandered that Democrats don't stand a chance, other than have the Democrats join the few rational Republicans and vote for whatever passes for a rational Republican. I'm a very old-fashioned Republican, which means I'm a social liberal, and I have publicly made it clear I am pro-choice for 40 years. And I was tolerated as the Republican Party changed course, because all the pro-lifers know that basically they didn't have to pay any attention to me. The one thing one of them once said was that it was okay for me to be on the school board because I couldn't do anything about abortion down there like I could if I had been elected to the state legislature. So let me tell you what I think about Pete Stauber. Pete Stauber, the nice guy Pete Stauber, former cop, he's the kind of guy who would use all the right words back in Nazi Germany as his Jewish neighbors were being hauled off and sent off to concentration camps. That's what I think. For instance, the question is, was his failure to get his name alongside the other 147 congressmen and senators who wanted to have 4 states' legitimate votes overthrown by phony electors, was his failure to put his name on that list really a clerical error? So he can claim that he didn't sign the list, but he let everybody know, wink, wink, that he meant to get his name on the list. That's Pete Stauber. Spineless? I've called him that. Cowardly? I'll call him that. Opportunist? I'll call him that. Liar? Cheat? Traitor? He's all those things. So, my suggestion to you, and I'm going to lay it out where I can, is that Democrats do everything they can to get me elected. Independents, people who value our Constitution, want a courageous and honest person. Vote for me in the primary that's coming up on August 9th, hoping that the Trumplicans are so politically disengaged they will just assume that Pete will get reelected and allow him to be defeated instead. And then you can vote for Jen Schultz. My wife has already told me she's going to vote for Jen Schultz. I hope to talk her out of that should I win the primary. It's not likely, but I'm living on fumes right now. One thing you can help me do is mail out some just kick-ass political pieces that beat the hell out of Pete for everything that he's done, so I can get them out to all 270,000 registered voters in the 8th Congressional District. You can do that, and I'll probably need about $70,000 to get the printing and the mailing done. You don't have much time to get that done, but I need to have that much money to tell all those people outside of the Duluth area, and they are by far 4/5 of the voters in the Congressional District. It's so big now. I have to get that message out, and you can help me raise that kind of money. And if you're not able to kick in $5, $10, $15, $20, $100, okay, but make sure you get your friends out there to vote for me. Then don't vote for me in the November general election. Vote for Jen Schultz. I started this with the desire to make sure Pete Stauber was no longer in Congress. He doesn't deserve to be in Congress. And if I don't go to Congress, that's okay. I'm 71 years old. I love spending time with my grandkids. I've been learning French. Awful close to being able to speak French now. Parlez-vous français? I got other things to do, but I would be a very interesting candidate. I'd be a very interesting congressman. I've read so much history. I know how Congress has worked, who and how different people have turned things on their head, and I want to see a Congress with a Republican that can attract sensible people into the party like existed with my grandfather and my parents. Maybe it can't be done, but I've been fighting all the things that can't be done for years and years and years. And I like that old song that Frank Sinatra used to sing. Once there was a silly old ant, thought he'd move a rubber tree plant. That was High Hopes. It was a Kennedy era song to talk about what we can do. And you might remember, John Kennedy set us on the path to the moon, something that couldn't be done. And he did it. You voters could do it too, even with a crazy guy like me who makes snow sculptures and puts up lawn signs that doesn't tell people what he's running for. I'm running to clean America out of its villainous traitors. That's what I'm up to. See ya.